Hey guys, this is ASMR Rhythms, and my video today is going to be about Frank Sinatra's early life and career up until the 60s. So I hope you guys like it. There's going to be some soft speaking and a little bit of gum chewing, so I hope you guys enjoy it. So here we go. Frank Sinatra was born December 12, 1915, in Hoboken, New Jersey, the only child of Italian immigrants Natalia Guevara and Antonio Martino Sinatra, and was raised Roman Catholic. In his book, Try and Stop Me, American publisher and writer Bennett Kreff says that Sinatra's father was a lightweight boxer who fought under the name Marty O'Brien and served with the Hoboken Fire Department as a captain. His mother, known as Dolly, was influential in the neighborhood and in local Democratic Party circles, but also ran an illegal abortion business that provided services for free. From her home, she was arrested several times and convicted twice for this offense. During the Great Depression, Dolly nevertheless provided money to her son for outings with friends and expensive clothes. Sinatra left high school without graduating, having attended only 47 days before being expelled because of his rowdy conduct. In 1938, Sinatra was arrested for adultery and seduction, a criminal offense at the time. For his livelihood, he worked as a delivery boy at the Jersey Observer newspaper, and later as a riveter at the Tianjin and Lang shipyard. But music was Sinatra's main interest, and he listened carefully to big band jazz. He began singing for tips at the age of 8, standing on top of the bar at the local nightclub in Hoboken. Sinatra began singing professionally as a teenager in the 1930s, although he learned music by ear and never learned how to read music. His career. Sinatra got his first break in 1935 when his mother persuaded a local singing group, the Three Flashes, to let him join. With Sinatra, the group became known as the Hoboken Four, and they sufficiently impressed Edward Bowens. After appearing on his show, Major Bowen's Amateur Hour, they attracted 40,000 votes and won first prize, a 6-month contract to perform on stage and radio across the United States. Sinatra left the Hoboken Four and returned home in late 1935. His mother secured him a job as a singing waiter at MC and MC at the Ruskin Cabin in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, for which he was paid $15 a week. On March 18, 1939, Sinatra made a demo recording of a song called Our Love with the Frank Main Band. The record has Frank Sinatra signed on the front. The bandleader kept the original record in a safe for nearly 60 years. In June, Harry James hired Sinatra on a 1-year contract of $75 a week. It was with the James Band that Sinatra released his first commercial record, From the Bottom of My Heart, in July 1939. In September 1940, Sinatra, after playing with Tommy Dorsey at Old Orchard Beach Pier, surprised nightclubbers in Portland, Maine by turning up at the Morocco Lounge. It was way before he became famous. Fewer than 8,000 copies of From the Bottom of My Heart were sold, making the record a very rare find that is sought after by record collectors worldwide. Sinatra released 10 commercial tracks with James through 1939, including All or Nothing at All, which had weak sales on its initial release, but then sold millions of copies when released by Columbia at the height of Sinatra's popularity a few years later. In November 1939, in a meeting at the Palmer House in Chicago, Sinatra was asked by bartender Tommy Dorsey to join his band as a replacement for Jack Leonard, who was the vocalist, but not to be confused with the comedian Jackie Leonard, who had recently left to launch a solo career. This meeting was a turning point in Sinatra's career. By signing with Dorsey's band, one of the hottest at the time, he greatly increased his visibility with the American public. Though Sinatra was still under contract with James recognized the opportunity Dorsey offered and graciously released Sinatra from his contract. Sinatra recognized his debt to James throughout his life, and upon hearing James's death in 1983 stated, he is the one that made it all possible. On January 26, 1940, Sinatra made his first public appearance with the Dorsey Band at the Colorado Theater at the Corando Theater in Rockford, Illinois. In his first year with Dorsey, Sinatra released more than 40 songs, with I'll Never Smile Again topping the charts for 12 weeks beginning in mid-July. Sinatra's relationship with Tommy Dorsey was troubled because of their contract, which awarded Dorsey 1/3 of Sinatra's lifetime earnings in the entertainment industry. In January 1942, Sinatra recorded his first solo sessions without the Dorsey Band, but with Dorsey's arranger, Axel Stromdahl, and with Dorsey's approval. These sessions were released commercially on the Bluebird label. Sinatra left the Dorsey Band in late 1942 in an incident that started rumors of Sinatra's involvement with the Mafia. A story appeared in the Hearst newspaper that mobsters and Sinatra's godfather, Willie Mortier, coerced Dorsey to let Sinatra out of his contract for a few $1,000s, and was fictionalized in the book and the movie The Godfather. According to Nancy Sinatra's biography, the Hearst rumors were started because of Frank's Democratic politics. In fact, the contract was bought out by MCA founder Julius C. Sten for $75,000. Sinatra mania and decline of Sinatra's career, 1940 to 1950. In May 1941, Sinatra was at the top of the male singer polls in Billboard and Downbeat magazine. His appeal to Bobby Soxers, as teenage girls of the time were called, revealed a whole new audience for popular music, which had been recorded mainly for adults up to that time. On December 30th, 1942, Sinatra made a legendary opening at the Paramount Theater in New York. Jack Bennett later said, I thought the goddamn building was going to cave in. I never heard such a commotion. All this for a fellow I'd never heard of." When Sinatra returned to the Paramount in October of 1944, 35,000 fans caused a near riot outside the venue because they were not allowed in. During the musician strikes of 1942 through 1944, Columbia released Harry James and Sinatra's version of All or Nothing at All, recorded in August of 1939, and released before Sinatra had made a name for himself. The original release did not even mention the vocalist's name. When the recording was re-released in 1943, with Sinatra's name prominently displayed, the record was on the best-selling list for 18 weeks and reached number 2 on June 2nd, 1943. Sinatra signed with Columbia on June 1st, 1943, as a solo artist, but he intentionally had great success, particularly during the musicians' strike. Although no new records had been issued during the strike, he had been performing on the radio and on stage. Columbia wanted new recordings of their growing star as quickly as possible, so Sinatra convinced them to hire Alec Wilder, an arranger and conductor, for several sessions with a vocal group called the Bobby Tucker Singers. These first sessions were on June 7th, June 22nd, August 5th, and November 10th, 1943. Of the 9 songs recorded during these sessions, 7 charted on the best-selling list. Sinatra did not serve in the military during World War II. On December 11th, 1943, he was classified 4F for a performance in Durham by his draft board. Additionally, an FBI report on Sinatra, released in 1998, showed that the doctors had also written that he was neurotic and not acceptable material from a psychiatric standpoint. This was omitted from his record to avoid undue unpleasantness for both the selectee and the induction service. Active duty servicemen like journalist William Manchester said of Sinatra, "I think Frank Sinatra was the most hated man of World War II, much more than Hitler, because Sinatra was back home making all of that money and being shown in photographs surrounded by beautiful women. His exemption was resurfaced throughout his life and caused him grief, and when he had to defend himself. There were accusations, including some from noted columnist Walter Winchell, that Sinatra paid $40,000 to avoid the service, but the FBI found no evidence of it." In his book Over Here, Over There, with Bill Gilbert, in her book Over Here, Over There with Bill Gilbert, Maxine Andrews recalled when Sinatra entertained the troops during an overseas U.S. tour with comedian Phil Silvers during the war. observing, "I guess they just had to wing-ding whatever it was." Sinatra demanded his own plane, but Bing Crosby said, "Don't demand anything. Just go over there and sing your heart out." So we did. Sinatra worked frequently with the very popular Andrews Sisters, both on the radio in the 1940s, appearing as guests on each other's shows, as well as on many shows broadcasting to troops via the Armed Forces Radio service. He appeared as special guest on a rare pilot episode of the Sisters' ABC 8 to the Bar Ranch series at the end of 1944, and returned for another much funnier guest stint a few months later, which the trio in turn guested on his Songs by Sinatra series on CBS, to the delight of an audience filled with screaming Bobby Soxers. Petty, Maxine, and Leverin also teamed with Frankie when they appeared 3 times as guests on Sinatra's CBS television show in the early 1950s. Maxine once told Joe Franklin during a 1979 WWOR-AM radio interview that Sinatra was a peculiar man with the ability to act indifferent towards her at times. In 1945, Sinatra co-starred with Gene Kelly in Anchors Aweigh. That same year, he was loaned out to RKO to star in a short film titled The House I Live In, directed by Mervyn Leroy. The film on tolerance and racial equality earned a special Academy Award shared among Sinatra and those who brought the film to the screen, along with a special Golden Globe for promoting goodwill. 1946 saw the release of his first album, The Voice of Frank Sinatra, and the debut of his own weekly radio show. By the end of 1948, Sinatra felt that his career was stalling, something that was confirmed when he slipped to number 4 on Downbeat's annual poll of the most popular singers, behind Bill Eckstein, Frankie Lane, and Bing Crosby. The year 1949 saw an upswing as Frank Sinatra co-starred with Gene Kelly in Take Me Out to the Ball Game. This was well received critically and became a major commercial success. That same year, Sinatra teamed up with Kelly for a third time on the Town. Starting in September 1949, the BBD&O advertising agency produced a radio series starring Sinatra for its client Lucky Strike called Light It Up. Some 176 15-minute shows which featured Frank and Dorothy Kristen singing, which lasted through to May 1950. The rebirth of Sinatra's career, Capitol concept albums 1950 to 1960. After a 2-year absence, Sinatra returned to the concert stage on January 12, 1950, in Hartford, Connecticut. His voice suffered and he experienced hemorrhaging of his vocal cords on stage at the Copacabana on April 26, 1950. Sinatra's career and appeal to new teen audiences declined as he moved into his mid-30s. This was a period of serious self-doubt and the decline of his career. In 1951, he was walking through Times Square past the Paramount Theater, keystone venue of his early phenomenal success. The Paramount marquee glowed in announcement of Eddie Fisher in concert. Swarms of teenage girls had gathered in frenzy, swooning over the current singing idol. For Sinatra, this public display of enthusiasm for Fisher validated a fear he had harbored in his own mind for a long time. The Sinatra star had fallen, and shouts of "Frankie" were echoes of the past. Disappointed, he walked home, closed his kitchen door, turned on the gas, and laid his head on top of the stove. A friend returned to the apartment not long after finding Sinatra lying on the floor, sobbing out the melodrama of his life, proclaiming his failure was so complete he could not even commit suicide. In September 1951, Sinatra made his Las Vegas debut at the Desert Inn, and he became a prominent figure on the Las Vegas scene through the 1950s and 1960s. A month later, a second season of The Frank Sinatra Show began on CBS television. Ultimately, Sinatra did not find the success on television for which he had hoped. The persona he presented to the television audience was not that of a performer easily welcomed into homes. He projected an arrogance not compatible with the type of cozy, congenial that played well on the small